The blazing Arizona sun beat down on Olivia Green's shoulders as she swung the axe at the broken wagon wheel for the dozenth time, exhaustion and futility making her arms tremble. Sweat trickled down her neck, soaking the collar of her once pristine blue traveling dress. The crack of the splintering wood had sealed her fate hours ago, leaving her stranded on the dusty trail between Tucson and nowhere. Blast it all to perdition. Olivia threw down the axe, its thud against the hard-packed earth punctuating her frustration. 3 days into her journey west, and this was how it would end, dying of thirst on an empty stretch of desert road, miles from civilization. At 22, Olivia had imagined many futures for herself after her parents' passing, but none involved perishing beside a broken wagon on the frontier. The small inheritance that had seemed like a blessing now felt like a curse. The advertisement from her distant cousin in Cody, Wyoming, had promised opportunity, a chance to start fresh, perhaps even find some semblance of family again. Now that dream was crumbling faster than the dry earth beneath her feet. She slumped against the wagon, sliding down until she sat in the meager strip of shade it provided. Her canteen was nearly empty, and the nearest water source could be miles away. The desert stretched out around her like an ocean of sand and scrub, indifferent to her plight. A soft whinny from her mare, Penny, alerted her to movement on the horizon. Olivia squinted into the distance, where a dust cloud signaled an approaching rider. Fear and hope warred within her chest. In these parts, a stranger could be salvation or danger. The rider approached at a steady pace, gradually taking shape against the shimmering heat waves. Broad-shouldered and tall in the saddle, he rode a magnificent chestnut stallion. The wide brim of his hat shadowed his face, but his confident posture suggested experience with the harsh terrain. Olivia scrambled to her feet, one hand instinctively reaching for the small derringer hidden in her pocket, a parting gift from her father. She'd never fired it at anything but bottles, but its weight provided a small comfort. The man pulled his horse to a stop several paces away, giving her space. Respectful, she noted, which was promising. As he removed his hat, revealing a tanned face with eyes the color of the summer sky, Olivia felt her breath catch. "Madam," he nodded, his voice deep and gentle. "Looks like you've had some trouble." "The wheel splintered," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm afraid I'm rather stuck." He dismounted with the grace of a man who'd spent his life on horseback, boots raising small puffs of dust as they hit the ground. "Thomas Blackett," he offered, extending a calloused hand. "Folks call me Tucker." "Olivia Green," she replied, briefly taking his hand. "I was headed to Cody, Wyoming. My cousin has a boarding house there." Tucker circled the wagon, examining the damage with a practiced eye. "That's mighty far from here. What brings you all this way alone?" There was no judgment in his question, merely curiosity, but Olivia still felt defensive. "My parents passed last winter. Fever. There's nothing left for me back east." Tucker nodded, understanding in his eyes. Loss was a familiar companion on the frontier. "Sorry to hear that." He knelt beside the broken wheel, running his fingers along the cracked wood. "This axle's shot too. No wonder it gave out. Wagons too heavy for these thin wheels on this terrain." He glanced at her load. "What are you carrying?" Olivia gestured to the trunks and crates. "Everything I own. Books mostly. My father was a professor." A smile touched Tucker's lips. "Books are worth their weight, even out here." He stood, dusting his hands on his worn denim pants. "I can fix this enough to get you moving, but it won't last all the way to Wyoming." Hope flared in Olivia's chest. "You can fix it. Got some tools and spare parts on my horse." "Won't be pretty, but it'll roll." He studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. My ranch is about half a day's ride north of here. I can get you there, help you proper." Suspicion immediately darkened Olivia's thoughts. She'd heard plenty of stories about women alone on the frontier. "That's very kind, but Mrs. Holbrook, my housekeeper, would be mighty pleased to have female company," Tucker added quickly, seeming to read her concern. "She's been with my family since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. Place is respectable, I assure you." There was something in his direct gaze that made Olivia believe him. Still, trusting a stranger in the middle of nowhere wasn't something she'd planned on doing today. Tucker seemed to sense her hesitation. "Fix your wagon first. You can decide after." For the next hour, Olivia watched as Tucker worked on her wagon with the expertise of someone who'd spent his life making do with whatever was at hand. He fashioned a temporary repair using parts from his saddlebags and pieces of wood he'd shaped with a small hatchet. "Been meaning to ask," he said as he hammered the makeshift wheel into place, "how'd you manage to get this far on your own?" Olivia straightened her shoulders. "I've been looking after myself since I was 16. My mother fell ill then, and my father, well, he retreated into his books. I learned to be practical." Tucker nodded, respect evident in his expression. "Still, it's dangerous country for anyone traveling alone." "I didn't have much choice," she replied simply. When he finally stood, wiping sweat from his brow with a red bandana, the sun was beginning its slow descent toward the western horizon. "It'll hold for maybe 20 miles, but those wheels won't make it all the way to Wyoming." Olivia surveyed his handiwork, impressed despite herself. "Thank you, Mr. Blackett." "Tucker," he corrected gently. "Tucker," she echoed, testing the name. He replaced his hat, squinting toward the north. "My offer stands. Ranch is that way, about 15 miles. Got a workshop where I can fix this properly." He paused, then added, "And you look like you could use a proper meal and rest before continuing your journey." Olivia weighed her options. She could continue alone with a temporarily repaired wagon that might break down again at any moment, or she could follow this stranger who had already shown her kindness when he could have simply ridden past. Tucker mounted his horse, then turned to her with an extended hand. "Follow me home, Miss Green, at least for a day or two. Get your wagon fixed right, rest up, then decide your path." Something in his voice, honest and without pretense, made the decision easier than she expected. "Lead the way, Mr. Blackett," she replied, climbing onto her wagon seat and taking up the reins. "But know that I still have half a mind to continue to Cody once the repair is done." A smile creased his sun-weathered face. "Fair enough." As they set off, the desert winds whispered around them, carrying dust and the promise of something neither had been looking for when the day began. The journey to Tucker's ranch took longer than expected. The makeshift repair held, but they traveled slowly to avoid further damage. Olivia found herself studying her unexpected savior as he rode ahead, occasionally circling back to check on her progress. There was an ease about him, a confidence born of knowing exactly who he was and where he belonged in the world. "How long have you been ranching?" she called out during one of his check-ins. "Born to it," Tucker replied, falling in beside her wagon. "My pa came out here after the Civil War, that is, built the place from nothing but sage and stubborn hope." "And your mother?" A shadow passed over his features. "Passed when I was 12. Childbirth. Baby brother didn't make it either." "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly. Tucker nodded, accepting her sympathy without dwelling in it. "Pa followed her 5 years back. Pneumonia took him quick. Been running the place since. Alone. Got a good crew. 8 hands, mostly Mexican fellows. Loyal men, and Mrs. Holbrook, like I mentioned," he smiled. "She's convinced I'll die without her stews and bread." "She might be right," Olivia replied with a small smile of her own. As the sun began its final descent toward the horizon, the landscape gradually changed. The barren desert gave way to grassland dotted with juniper trees and rocky outcroppings. They crested a gentle hill and Tucker pointed ahead. There she is, Stillwater Ranch. Below them, a valley opened up, cradling a stream that glinted like silver in the fading light. Along its banks sat a collection of buildings, a large log house with a wide porch, several outbuildings, a barn and corrals where horses grazed peacefully. Cattle dotted the surrounding pastureland, dark shapes against the golden grass. "It's beautiful," Olivia breathed, genuinely surprised by the oasis-like quality of the place after the harsh desert. Pride straightened Tucker's shoulders. Pa chose well. The stream never runs dry, even in the worst summers. They made their way down to the ranch, where their arrival sparked immediate activity. Men emerged from the bunkhouse, calling greetings to Tucker in a mix of English and Spanish. A short, round woman with iron-gray hair bustled out of the main house, wiping her hands on her apron. "Thomas Blackett, you're late for supper again, and I'll not be keeping plates warm all." She stopped short at the sight of Olivia. "Blessed saints, you've brought company." Tucker dismounted, taking the reins from Olivia's hands as she climbed stiffly down from the wagon. "Mrs. Holbrook, this is Miss Olivia Green. Her wagon broke down about 15 miles south. She'll be staying with us while I fix it." Mrs. Holbrook's weathered face broke into a wide smile. "About time we had a lady visit. The place could use a feminine touch beyond my old hands." She embraced Olivia warmly. "Come in, dear. You look half dead from the trail. We'll get you fed and rested." Olivia found herself swept into the house before she could protest. Inside, the main room was surprisingly comfortable, rustic but clean, with a large stone fireplace, sturdy furniture draped with colorful woven blankets, and bookshelves lining one wall. "You have books," she noted with surprise. Tucker, who had followed them in, nodded. "Pa believed in education, even out here. I add to the collection when I can." Mrs. Holbrook guided Olivia to a washroom off the kitchen, where a basin of water and clean towels awaited. "Wash up, dear. I'll have food on the table in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail." Left alone, Olivia stared at her reflection in the small mirror above the basin. Dust coated her face, and her dark blonde hair had escaped its pins in unruly tendrils. She looked wild, unkempt, nothing like the proper Boston lady she'd been raised to be. Strangely, she didn't mind the transformation as much as she might have expected. Dinner was a revelation. Mrs. Holbrook's cooking put the meager meals Olivia had managed on the trail to shame. Thick venison stew, fresh bread, and preserved peaches revived her spirits along with her body. "This is wonderful," she told the older woman sincerely. "I haven't eaten this well since leaving Boston." Tucker, seated across from her, smiled. Mrs. Holbrook could make boot leather taste good. The housekeeper swatted his shoulder affectionately. "Don't you be giving away my secrets, boy." After dinner, Tucker showed Olivia to a small but comfortable bedroom. "It was my mother's sewing room," he explained, looking slightly embarrassed. "Mrs. Holbrook keeps it ready for guests, though we don't get many." The room held a narrow bed with a handmade quilt, a dresser, and a rocking chair by the window. A small vase of wildflowers sat on the windowsill. "Mrs. Holbrook's touch, no doubt." "It's perfect," Olivia assured him. "Thank you." Tucker lingered in the doorway. "I'll look at your wagon first thing tomorrow. The wheel needs to be rebuilt entirely, and that axle needs reinforcement if you're planning to make it all the way to Wyoming." "How long will it take?" 2, maybe 3 days. He hesitated. "You're welcome to stay as long as needed." Olivia nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the kindness of this stranger who'd become her host. "You've been very generous, Mr. Blackett." "Tucker," he reminded her, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Get some rest, Miss Green, you're safe here." After he left, Olivia sank onto the bed, the day's events catching up with her all at once. She'd been so certain this morning that her journey was ending in disaster, yet here she was, warm and fed in a stranger's home. A stranger with kind eyes and capable hands who had appeared like a mirage in the desert when she needed help most. Sleep claimed her quickly, deeper and more peaceful than any rest she'd found since leaving Boston. The next morning, Olivia woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the distant sounds of a working ranch. For a moment, she was disoriented, then remembered the previous day's events. She dressed quickly in one of her simpler dresses, a practical navy blue with fewer buttons than her traveling outfit, and ventured out. She found Mrs. Holbrook in the kitchen, kneading bread dough with practiced movements. "Good morning, dear. Sleep well?" the housekeeper asked cheerfully. "Better than I have in weeks," Olivia admitted. "Hungry? There's coffee on the stove and biscuits keeping warm in the oven. Tucker's already out checking your wagon." After a hearty breakfast, Olivia ventured outside to find Tucker beside her wagon, systematically dismantling the damaged wheel. Several wooden spokes lay on a tarp beside him, along with tools and what appeared to be new pieces of wood. "Good morning," she called, approaching cautiously to avoid startling him. Tucker looked up, a smile spreading across his face that made something flutter in Olivia's chest. "Miss Green." "Hope you slept well. Please call me Olivia," she replied. "And yes, wonderfully. Your hospitality has been remarkable." He set down his tools and stood brushing dust from his hands. "Glad to hear it," he gestured to the wagon. "Damage is about what I expected. I'll need to rebuild this wheel entirely and strengthen the axle." "How can I help?" Olivia asked. Surprise flickered across his face, quickly replaced by appreciation. "Most folks would just wait in the house." "I'm not most folks," she replied simply, "and I prefer to be useful." Tucker's laugh was warm and genuine. "I'm starting to see that," he considered for a moment. "Can you handle a plane? For smoothing wood? I've never tried, but I'm willing to learn." For the next several hours, Olivia worked alongside Tucker, following his patient instructions as they prepared new spokes for the wheel. His hands occasionally guided hers, showing her how to hold the tools properly, and each brief contact sent a peculiar warmth through her that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun. "You're a natural," he commented as she successfully shaped a spoke to match the others. "I've always been good with my hands," she replied, then flushed at how the words sounded. "I mean, I used to help my father with his book bindings and such." Tucker smiled. "Book bindings to wagon wheels isn't such a leap. Both take patience and precision." By midday, they had prepared all the necessary pieces. Mrs. Holbrook brought them lunch: cold chicken, bread, and apple cider, which they ate in the shade of a large cottonwood tree. "Tell me about your cousin in Cody," Tucker said, stretching his long legs out before him. Olivia took a sip of cider before answering. "Margaret is my mother's cousin, actually. We've never met, but she wrote after hearing of my parents' passing. She owns a boarding house and offered me a position helping her run it." "And that's what you want, to run a boarding house in Wyoming?" The question gave her pause. "I want a place to belong," she admitted finally. "Margaret is my only remaining family. It seemed like the logical choice." Tucker studied her thoughtfully. "Family's important," he agreed, "but so is finding your own way." "And what of you?" she asked, turning the conversation away from herself. "Is this ranch your own way?" A smile touched his lips. "Never wanted anything else. This land gets in your blood. The open skies, the changing seasons, even the hardships, they become part of you." Olivia found herself envying his certainty, his clear knowledge of his place in the world. It must be nice having such conviction. Took time, he admitted. After Pa died, I nearly sold the place. Thought maybe I should try my hand at something else, somewhere else. What changed your mind? Tucker's gaze drifted to the distant mountains. Packed my bags, saddled my horse, made it about 5 miles out. He smiled at the memory. Then I turned around and looked back at this valley, and I knew I couldn't leave. This wasn't just land my pa owned, it was home. The simple sincerity in his words touched something in Olivia. All her life, home had been a place of duty and expectations. First as a daughter, then as a caretaker for her ailing parents. She'd never experienced home as something that called to her soul the way this ranch clearly called to Tucker. After lunch, they returned to work. Tucker began the precise task of assembling the wheel, fitting the new spokes to the hub and rim with careful measurements and adjustments. This is the tricky part, he explained, aligning a spoke. Each one has to bear weight evenly or the whole thing fails. Olivia watched his hands work, strong yet delicate in their precision. Like a community, she observed, everyone bearing their share. Tucker glanced up, surprise and appreciation in his eyes. Exactly like that. You understand more about ranch life than you might think, Olivia Green. The day passed swiftly, and by sunset, the new wheel was taking shape, though not yet complete. As they walked back to the house together, Olivia found herself reluctant for the day to end. "Would you show me the rest of your ranch tomorrow?" she asked impulsively. "After we work on the wagon, of course." Tucker's smile was answer enough. "I'd be honored." That evening, after another delicious meal, Tucker invited Olivia to join him on the porch. The night air was cool but pleasant, a welcome relief after the day's heat. They sat in comfortable rocking chairs, gazing at stars that seemed impossibly bright and close. "I've never seen the sky like this," Olivia marveled. "In Boston, there are too many lights, too much smoke from the factories." "One of the best things about the West," Tucker agreed. "Makes a person feel small and big at the same time, if that makes any sense." "It does," she replied softly. "Small because we're just tiny specks beneath all that vastness, but big because we can comprehend it, appreciate it." Tucker turned to look at her, his expression contemplative in the dim light from the house windows. "You speak like your father was a professor." Olivia laughed lightly. "I suppose some of it rubbed off. He taught literature and philosophy before he became too ill to continue." "What did you like to read?" "Back in Boston, everything," she admitted. "History, poetry, novels, though my father considered the last frivolous." Tucker was quiet for a moment. "Would you like to see my library, properly, I mean? There's not much light now, but tomorrow evening perhaps." The eagerness in his voice made her smile. "I would like that very much." They fell into comfortable silence, the only sounds the creak of their rocking chairs and the chorus of night insects. Eventually, Olivia felt her eyelids growing heavy. "I should retire," she said reluctantly. "Thank you for today, Tucker, for everything." He stood when she did, a gentleman's instinct that surprised her slightly coming from a rugged rancher. "Sleep well, Olivia." As she made her way to her room, Olivia realized with a start that for the first time since her parents' deaths, she hadn't felt the weight of grief or uncertainty all day. Instead, working alongside Tucker, she had felt purposeful, present, even happy. The thought was both comforting and unsettling. Comforting because it suggested healing was possible. Unsettling because it was happening here, on this remote Arizona ranch, rather than in the place she'd been journeying toward. The next morning brought a change in routine. Tucker had to ride out with his men to check on a section of fence reportedly damaged by a flash flood earlier in the week. "Should be back by midday," he told her over breakfast. "Feel free to rest, or Mrs. Holbrook can always use help with her preserves." "I'll find ways to be useful," Olivia assured him. After he left, she helped Mrs. Holbrook with the kitchen garden, harvesting late summer vegetables and learning which herbs the older woman dried for winter cooking and medicinal purposes. "Been a blessing having you here, Mrs. Holbrook commented as they worked. "Haven't seen Tucker this lively in ages." Olivia felt a blush creep up her neck. "He's been very kind." Mrs. Holbrook gave her a knowing look. "Kind he's always been, but cheerful. That's newer." She snipped a sprig of rosemary with decisive precision. "Not since his father passed has he smiled so much." Uncertain how to respond, Olivia changed the subject. "How long have you been with the Blackett family?" The older woman's face softened with memory. "Going on 30 years now. Came out with Mr. Blackett's wife Tucker's mother as her lady's companion. She wasn't built for frontier life, poor soul, too delicate." A shadow crossed her features. "After she passed, Mr. Blackett asked me to stay on, look after young Tucker. Never had children of my own, so he became like a son to me." "He speaks very fondly of you," Olivia offered. Mrs. Holbrook nodded, a mother's pride evident in her expression. "He's a good boy. Man now, of course. Too alone, though. This place needs a woman's touch, a younger woman's," she added meaningfully. Before Olivia could formulate a response to this less than subtle hint, the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. Tucker and his men had returned earlier than expected. As they rode into the yard, Olivia noticed immediately that something was wrong. Tucker's expression was grim, and one of the men rode double with another, who seemed to be holding his arm at an unnatural angle. Mrs. Holbrook sprang into action. "Bring him to the kitchen, Miguel," she called to one of the riders. "Olivia, fetch my medicine box from the pantry blue wooden chest on the top shelf." The next hour passed in controlled chaos. The injured man, Ernesto, one of the younger ranch hands, had been thrown from his horse when it spooked at a rattlesnake. His arm was broken, and he had a deep gash on his forehead that bled profusely. To Olivia's surprise, she found herself working calmly alongside Mrs. Holbrook, using skills learned while caring for her parents. She cleaned the head wound while the housekeeper and Tucker set the broken arm, then helped prepare a splint. "You've done this before," Tucker observed as she efficiently bandaged Ernesto's head. "My mother's illness kept her bedridden for years. I learned what I could from the doctors who visited," she explained. When Ernesto was finally resting comfortably in the bunkhouse under the watchful eye of his companions, Tucker and Olivia returned to the main house. They washed the blood from their hands in silence, the shared experience creating a new kind of understanding between them. "Thank you," Tucker said finally. "You were impressive back there." "I was glad to help," she replied honestly. He studied her for a moment. "Most city women would have fainted at the sight of all that blood." "I've told you," she said with a small smile, "I'm not most women." "No," he agreed softly, "you certainly are not." They spent the afternoon finishing the wagon wheel, working with a new rhythm that required few words. By sunset, the wheel was complete and mounted, and Tucker had reinforced the axle with metal bracing. "It's ready," he announced, stepping back to survey their work. "Should get you all the way to Wyoming now, sturdy as they come." Olivia ran her hand along the smooth wood of the new wheel, feeling an odd reluctance. "Thank you. It's fine craftsmanship." Tucker wiped his hands on a rag, his expression unreadable. "Promised you a tour of the ranch and a look at the library, didn't I? Still interested?" "Very much so," she replied, perhaps too quickly. He saddled 2 horses, his chestnut stallion and a gentle bay mare for Olivia. "Mrs. Holbrook says you helped with the garden this morning. Thought you might like to see more than just the yard." They rode out as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the grassland. Tucker proved to be a knowledgeable guide, pointing out the natural features of his land with obvious pride: the stream that bisected the property, the sheltered valleys where cattle grazed, the stands of trees that provided wood and shelter. "Over there," he said, pointing to a distant hillside, "is where I'm planning to build a new corral system. The spring on that slope never runs dry, even in drought years." "You're expanding?" Olivia asked. Tucker nodded. "Got a contract with the Army fort up north for beef. Good steady income lets me improve the place bit by bit." As they crested a rise, he pulled his horse to a stop. "This is my favorite view." Before them, the land fell away into a sweeping vista of the valley. The stream glinted in the late sunlight, winding like a silver ribbon through golden grassland. In the distance, purple mountains rose against a sky ablaze with sunset colors. "It's breathtaking," Olivia murmured, genuinely awed. Tucker's eyes were on her rather than the view. "Pa used to say God took extra time on this part of the world, making sure all the colors matched just right." Olivia felt a lump form in her throat. "My mother used to say something similar about autumn in Massachusetts, that God painted the trees while the devil wasn't looking, so they'd be too beautiful for evil to touch." They shared a smile of understanding, the kind that passes between two people who have each lost something precious and recognize that pain in the other. As they turned their horses back toward the ranch house, Olivia felt a growing certainty that leaving the next day would be far more difficult than she had anticipated. After dinner, true to his promise, Tucker showed her his library. The room was smaller than the main living area, but lined floor to ceiling with bookshelves. A comfortable leather chair sat by the window, with an oil lamp on a small table beside it. "It's not as grand as what you're used to, I'm sure," Tucker said, lighting the lamp, "but each one has meaning to me." Olivia moved along the shelves, fingers tracing the spines of books that ranged from practical manuals on animal husbandry to leather-bound collections of Shakespeare and Wordsworth. "These were your father's?" she asked, touching a well-worn copy of Paradise Lost. Tucker nodded. "He believed a man should work with his hands and his mind, said one without the other makes for a life half-lived. He sounds like a wise man." He was. Tucker pulled a volume from the shelf, handling it with obvious care. "This was my mother's favorite, Poems by Elizabeth Barrett Browning." He opened it carefully, and a pressed flower, long dried but still recognizable as a wildflower, fell from between the pages. "She loved beauty in all forms," he said softly, replacing the flower. "Pa said she was too fine for this rough country, but she tried her best to love it for his sake." Olivia felt privileged to be shown these pieces of his past, these glimpses into the people who had shaped him. "Thank you for sharing this with me." Their eyes met over the book between them, and something shifted in the air, a recognition, a possibility. For a breathless moment, Olivia thought he might step closer, might bridge the small distance between them. Instead, he carefully returned the book to its place. "It's getting late. You've had a long day." "Yes," she agreed, disappointment mingling with relief. Everything was happening too quickly, emotions she hadn't expected rising to the surface after just 2 days in this man's company. They walked together to her room, stopping outside the door. "What time do you plan to leave tomorrow?" Tucker asked, his voice carefully neutral. The question brought reality crashing back. Tomorrow. She would be leaving tomorrow, continuing her journey to Cody, to her cousin's boarding house, to the future she had planned. I hadn't thought about it," she admitted. Tucker nodded. "No rush. Roads are clear all the way to the territory line." "Thank you again for everything," Olivia said, the words feeling woefully inadequate. "It was my pleasure," he replied softly. "Truly." He hesitated. Then, with a gentle "good night, Olivia," turned and walked away down the hallway, his footsteps fading into the quiet house. Alone in her room, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, conflicting emotions churning within her. The logical path was clear. Continue to Cody as planned, where family and a secure position awaited. It was why she had undertaken this journey in the first place. Yet something about Stillwater Ranch, about Tucker himself, had awakened feelings she hadn't known. She possessed a yearning for more than mere security, for a life that could be rich with purpose and genuine connection. She had known the man for only 3 days. It was madness to even consider altering her plans based on such a brief acquaintance. And yet, Olivia fell into a restless sleep, dreams filled with wagon wheels that never stopped turning and paths that forked endlessly into the distance. Morning came too quickly. Olivia dressed slowly, deliberately, her trunk already packed but her heart increasingly uncertain. When she finally emerged from her room, she found the house unusually quiet. Mrs. Holbrook was in the kitchen, kneading bread dough with more force than necessary. "Morning, dear. Tucker's gone to check on Ernesto and the other boys. Said to tell you he'd be back to help load your things when you're ready." Olivia nodded, a hollow feeling spreading in her chest. "Thank you, Mrs. Holbrook, for everything." The older woman stopped her work, wiping flour-covered hands on her apron. "Can I speak plainly, girl? Of course. Tucker hasn't been the same since you arrived. There's a lightness to him I haven't seen in years." She fixed Olivia with a penetrating stare. "What's waiting for you in Wyoming that's so important?" Olivia blinked, taken aback by the direct question. "My cousin, the position she offered." "And is that what you want, truly? To run some boarding house for strangers in a town you've never seen?" Olivia faltered. "It's the sensible choice." Mrs. Holbrook snorted. "Sensible, the refuge of those too afraid to follow their hearts." Her expression softened. "Life out here is hard, make no mistake, but it's real and it can be beautiful if you're brave enough to embrace it." Before Olivia could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps announced Tucker's return. He entered the kitchen, hat in hand, his expression carefully composed. "Morning," he greeted them both. "Ernesto's doing well. Fever's down." "Good," Mrs. Holbrook replied briskly. "I'm going to check on him myself. You two have things to discuss." She shot Olivia a meaningful look before bustling out the door. Left alone, an awkward silence fell between them. "Your wagon's ready whenever you are," Tucker said finally. "I've prepared some provisions for your journey. Should last you to the next town at least." "Thank you," Olivia replied, the words catching in her throat. He nodded, his gaze moving to the window. Weather should hold clear for the next few days. Good traveling conditions. This stilted conversation was unbearable. Just yesterday they had worked side by side in easy companionship, shared stories and laughter. Now they were like strangers again, careful and distant. "Tucker," she began, not sure what she intended to say. At the same moment he turned to her. "Olivia." They both stopped, then shared a small, uncomfortable laugh. "Please," she gestured for him to continue. Tucker took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders as if preparing for something difficult. "I've been thinking. Your wagon's fixed, but that journey to Wyoming is long and still dangerous for a woman alone." "I managed to get this far," she reminded him gently. "You did," he acknowledged. "You're clearly capable, but—" He hesitated, then forged ahead. "What if you didn't have to go? What if you stayed here?" Olivia's heart leapt, then just as quickly fell. "As your housekeeper?" she asked, working to keep her voice steady. Tucker's eyes widened. "No, I mean, not unless," he raked a hand through his hair in frustration. "I'm making a mess of this." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes, the way the morning sunlight brought out auburn highlights in his brown hair. "Olivia Green," I know it's madness. We've known each other 3 days. But in those 3 days, I've seen your courage, your kindness, your willingness to work hard and learn new things. I've seen how you look at this land with appreciation, not just tolerance. His voice softened. I've seen you fit into this place, this life, as if you were meant to be part of it all along. Olivia could scarcely breathe. What are you saying, Tucker? I'm saying I don't want you to leave, he admitted simply. Not today, not ever, if that could be your choice too. But my cousin, write to her. Explain that you've found another path. He took her hands in his, warm and calloused. Stay, not as my housekeeper, not as my guest. Stay because there could be something between us worth exploring, worth building a life around. Olivia's mind raced. It was too soon, too impulsive, too unlike the careful plans she had made. And yet, hadn't her entire journey west been about finding a new beginning? Who was to say where that beginning should be, or with whom? I barely know you, she whispered. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. That's the beauty of it. We'd have all the time in the world to learn each other. No rush, no pressure. Just two people seeing if what we've both felt these past days could grow into something lasting. His words resonated with a truth Olivia couldn't deny. There had been something between them from the moment he'd stopped to help her on that dusty road, a connection, a recognition that defied logical explanation. What if it doesn't work? She asked, giving voice to her greatest fear. What if we discover we're not suited after all? Then I'd help you continue to Wyoming or wherever else you wanted to go. His thumbs traced gentle circles on her palms. But I think it would work, Olivia. I think it already is working. She looked around the kitchen, at the home he was inviting her to be part of. It wasn't what she had planned. It wasn't the safe, predictable future she had set out to find. It was better. It was real. Yes, she said finally, the word both terrifying and exhilarating as it left her lips. I'll stay. Tucker's face transformed with joy, years seeming to fall away as he pulled her into an embrace. Olivia felt herself melt against him, felt the rightness of being in his arms, and knew with sudden clarity that this unexpected detour was actually her destination. Is this really happening? She murmured against his shoulder. His chuckle rumbled through his chest. If it's a dream, I hope neither of us wakes up. When he finally released her, his expression grew serious again. I want to do this properly. I'm not asking for promises beyond giving us time to know each other. But I want to court you properly, with respect. Olivia's heart swelled at his honorable intentions. I'd like that very much. A throat clearing from the doorway interrupted them. Mrs. Holbrook stood there, her stern expression belied by the suspicious moisture in her eyes. I take it the young lady won't be needing her wagon loaded after all, she asked, though the answer was clearly written on both their faces. Tucker's arm remained around Olivia's waist, solid and secure. Miss Green has decided to extend her stay with us, Mrs. Holbrook, indefinitely. The older woman nodded with satisfaction. Good. I was afraid I'd have to knock some sense into both your heads. She turned to Olivia. Welcome home, dear. Home, such a simple word, yet so powerful. Olivia had traveled hundreds of miles seeking it, never imagining she would find it in the most unexpected place, with a man who had appeared in her life by chance or perhaps by something more like fate. As summer turned to fall, and fall to winter, Olivia found her place at Stillwater Ranch. Tucker was true to his word, courting her with respectful devotion while giving her space to adjust to her new life. She wrote to her cousin in Wyoming, explaining her change in plans, and received a warm reply wishing her happiness. Mrs. Holbrook taught her the rhythms of ranch life, how to preserve the garden's bounty for winter, how to make soap from rendered fat and lye, how to bake bread in the temperamental wood stove. Olivia, in turn, organized Tucker's library, and started a correspondence with a bookseller in Tucson, who sent monthly packages of new reading material. The ranch hands, initially shy around the Boston lady, soon warmed to her as she learned Spanish phrases from them and treated Ernesto's healing arm with gentle care. When she organized an impromptu celebration for Miguel's birthday, complete with a cake and small gifts, their acceptance of her became complete. But it was her relationship with Tucker that flourished most visibly. Their compatibility, evident from those first days working on the wagon wheel, only deepened as they learned more about each other. Their differences, his practicality balancing her idealism, her organized mind complementing his intuitive approach, made them stronger together than apart. By Christmas, when the ranch house was decorated with pine boughs and the scent of cinnamon and cloves filled the kitchen, Tucker took Olivia on a ride to the hilltop where he had shown her his favorite view. Snow dusted the distant mountains, and the winter sun cast long shadows across the valley. Tucker helped her dismount, then took both her hands in his. "6 months ago, your wagon broke down on my land," he began, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. "I thought I was just helping a traveler in need. Instead, I found the other half of my soul." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, not from the cold but from the emotion swelling in her chest. "I know now, beyond any doubt, that I love you, Olivia Green," Tucker continued. "I love your courage and your kindness, your intelligence and your laughter. I love watching you discover this land, making it your own in ways I never imagined." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box, carved with intricate patterns of leaves and flowers. "I've been working on this in the evenings," he explained, placing it in her hands. Olivia opened it carefully. Inside lay a ring, not a diamond, but a smooth band of polished silver set with a small, deep blue stone. "It's turquoise," Tucker explained. "From the mountains to the west. The silver was my mother's, from a brooch she never wore but kept for sentimental reasons." He looked suddenly uncertain. "It's not what you might have had in Boston, it's perfect," Olivia interrupted, her voice thick with emotion. "More perfect than anything I could have imagined." Tucker took the ring from the box, holding it between them. "Olivia Green, will you marry me? Will you build a life with me here, sharing all the joys and challenges that come with it?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. 1,000 times yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close for a kiss that promised a lifetime of devotion, Olivia thought of how differently her journey could have ended. If her wagon hadn't broken down in exactly the right place, if Tucker hadn't been riding by at exactly the right time, if he hadn't offered that simple invitation, "Follow me home," that had changed everything. They were married in the spring, when wildflowers carpeted the grasslands and new calves wobbled beside their mothers in the pastures. The ceremony was small but joyful, attended by the ranch hands and a few neighbors from miles around. Mrs. Holbrook wept openly, declaring it the happiest day since Tucker's birth. Olivia wore a new dress of pale blue silk, ordered from Tucson, with her mother's lace veil. Tucker stood tall and handsome in his best suit, nervousness and joy warring on his face until the moment he saw her walking toward him. And then only joy remained. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promises to cherish and support each other through whatever life brought their way. When the traveling preacher pronounced them husband and wife, the gathering erupted in cheers and well wishes. The celebration continued well into the evening, with music and dancing under lantern light in the yard. As night fell, Tucker led his bride to their home, the main house, now bright with new curtains Olivia had sewn and bookshelves Tucker had built to accommodate their growing collection. "Welcome home, Mrs. Blackett," he whispered, lifting her over the threshold. Olivia wrapped her arms around his neck, marveling at how this man and this place had become her world in less than a year. "I am home," she replied, "more truly than I've ever been." Their life together was not without challenges. That summer brought drought that threatened the cattle. The following winter, a blizzard stranded them for weeks with dwindling supplies. But they faced each difficulty as partners, their bond strengthening through shared purpose and unwavering trust. In their second year of marriage, Olivia discovered she was expecting a child. The news brought both joy and anxiety as the nearest doctor was in Tucson, a journey of several days. "We'll manage," Tucker assured her, holding her close as they sat on the porch swing one evening. "Mrs. Holbrook delivered half the children in this county before there was a proper doctor. And I've sent word to a midwife in the next settlement to come stay with us when your time approaches." Olivia rested her head on his shoulder, watching the sunset paint the sky in familiar splendor. "I never imagined this life," she admitted. "When I left Boston, I thought I was heading toward security, predictability." Tucker's hand covered hers where it rested on her growing belly. "Regrets? Not one," she replied with conviction. "This life, our life, is richer than anything I could have planned." Their son was born in the deepest part of winter, a healthy boy with his father's blue eyes and his mother's determined spirit. They named him James, after Tucker's father, with Edward as a middle name to honor Olivia's. As Olivia nursed her newborn son by the fire, Tucker sitting beside them with wonder and pride on his face, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The broken wagon that had seemed like disaster had been the beginning of everything good in her life. "What are you thinking about?" Tucker asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "About how sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as misfortunes," she replied, smiling down at their sleeping child. "About how thankful I am that my wagon broke down exactly where it did." Tucker leaned over to kiss her gently. "And I'm thankful I was there to fix it." "And that you said those words that changed my life," she added. "Follow me home," he recalled softly. "Best invitation I ever gave." "Best one I ever accepted," she agreed. In the years that followed, the Blackett family grew with the addition of twin girls Clara and Catherine, who arrived 2 years after James. Stillwater Ranch prospered under Tucker and Olivia's joint stewardship. They expanded the cattle operation, built a proper schoolhouse for their children and those of nearby ranches, and established a small library that became a gathering place for the scattered community. Olivia's cousin Margaret visited from Wyoming when the twins were christened, and declared with satisfaction that things had worked out exactly as they should. "You were meant for this life, Olivia," she said as they watched Tucker teaching 5-year-old James to ride his first pony. "I can see it in every inch of you." Olivia couldn't disagree. The elegant Boston lady had long since transformed into a capable ranch wife, her hands now as skilled with a branding iron or garden hoe as they had once been with embroidery needles. Her sheltered upbringing had given way to a life lived fully, embracing both its hardships and its joys. On their 10th anniversary, Tucker surprised her with a new wagon sturdier than her original one, with her initials carved into the side. "What's this for?" she asked, puzzled by the gift. Tucker's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Thought we might take the children on a journey, show them where it all began." And so, on a bright spring morning, the Blackett family set out in their wagon, following the trail to the spot where a broken wheel had altered the course of 2 lives forever. As they picnicked in the shade of a lone cottonwood tree, Tucker recounted the story to their wide-eyed children. "Your mama's wagon broke right here," he told them, pointing to the dusty ground. "And when I fixed it enough to roll, I asked her to follow me home. And she did." 8-year-old James exclaimed. Olivia smiled, watching her family this miracle she had never expected to find. Best decision I ever made. Tucker's arms slipped around her waist, pulling her close as they watched their children play in the spring sunshine. When I rode out that day, I was just checking fences. Had no idea I'd find the missing piece of my heart stranded by the roadside. And I had no idea that a broken wagon would lead me exactly where I belonged, Olivia replied, leaning into his embrace. Together, they had built a life neither could have imagined alone, a life of purpose and passion, of challenges met and joys shared, of a love that had begun with a simple act of kindness on a dusty Arizona trail. As the afternoon sunlight bathed the landscape in golden warmth, Olivia gave thanks once more for the twist of fate that had brought her here, for the broken wheel that had led to a whole life, for the stranger who had become her world, and for the courage to follow him home.